In this tutorial, we build on what we learned about Java server pages in our previous lesson. This is the high-level overview. We will learn about the JSP page directive. We will learn all about directives, declarations, scriptlets, and expressions. And we will take a look at JSP code comments, how we import our Java packages into JSP, and finally we'll look at all the possible JSP directives in more details. Now at this stage we are going to go back to our course documentation and select our current lesson. And we'll start by learning about the JSP page directive. And what we'll do is we'll compare the HTML with JSP in our index.jsp and the sample.jsp, and we will remove the actual page directive. So in Eclipse, we see the page directive at the top of our index.jsp file. Specifies a content type of text HTML and a character set of UTF-8, and it specifies the language as Java. And we essentially have the same page copied to sample.jsp, except that we don't have the page directive. So let's run it. So this is our index.jsp file. And now we are going to look at our sample page. And we see it looks exactly the same, except for the little line that's missing that had it specified as a JSP servlet in the other one. Now when we go back to Eclipse and take a look at our multi-value parameter servlet, we see in the response that the content type and the character encoding is set. At this stage, I'll encourage you to look at a previous lecture and to play around and to look at how these JSPs are compiled into servlets in your Tomcat environment. It's a great way to learn through doing. And now we go back to our course documentation. And in our next section, we are going to look at directives, declarations, scriptlets, and expressions. And we see a directive looks like this with the @ sign. And we've already seen examples of the page directive. Then a declaration is used to declare instance variables, methods, and inner classes. And we see this is a declaration starting off with the bang symbol. Then a scriptlet is Java code copied to the JSP service method in the generated servlet. And therefore the scope is thus method level and not global as above. And we see plainly a scriptlet doesn't have any fancy characters in front of it. And then a return value to be displayed in the page from an expression. And here the scope is also method level as above. And we see the expression has the equal sign here. So what we'll do next is put all of this together in an example JSP page, and then we will look into the compiled or translated servlet Java file to understand all of these better. Now back in Eclipse, and we look at our example.jsp page. We see the JSP directive at the top of the page, and we have the declaration section where we define an integer, a string, a method, and an inner class that we instantiate. Then we have the scriptlet code, which will be copied to the JSP service method, where we essentially just create another inner class. And then we have the expressions that will output the display to the HTML. We have hello world, and we have a call to our method up here that we pass in a value. Now let's run the app and take a look at our example.jsp. So here is our hello world display and our function. Now let's go back to Eclipse and take a look at that compiled or translated JSP file. We'll look at the Apache server environment. We'll open the launch configuration. And we are going to look at the base directory. And in the base directory, we'll look at work, Catalina, localhost, and org Apache, JSP. And here is our translated example.jsp. So let's go to the top. And here we see our declarations. We have our integer, our strings, our methods, and our inner class. Then we have our JSP service method. And in here we see our scriptlet code. We also see our output. And that should help us understand the process of JSPs getting compiled into servlets. Now back to our course documentation for section 3 and 4. And this is all about code comments within JSP. We'll leave this for self-study, for you to play around with these comments, put it into the example JSP, and see what happens. Then on to section 4, which shows how to import the Java packages in your JSP page. This is another one to play around with yourself. Maybe add a package to the method that displays the addition of the long. Now the next step is a deeper dive into JSP directives. And once again, here I'll leave it to self-study, and specifically the actual Jakarta documentation on directives, which gives us a nice overview of everything that can be included in the page directive. Now back to our course documentation for our second last section, including other JSP. So this is the include directive, and we will create an includer JSP in the web root, and then we will include the existing index.jsp, compile and debug the app, and navigate to the translated JSP in the Eclipse workspace. And we have another includer option, that is the page. And here the JSP is compiled separately. And then at the runtime, the request is forwarded dynamically to the included JSP. We will repeat these steps and then dig deeper into them. Now back to Eclipse. Here is our includer JSP with the include file of the index.jsp, which is our hello world file. And then we also have the dynamic includer with the page includer. So let's run it. And we'll look at our includer JSP first. And we see the output looks exactly the same. Now let's take a look at our dynamic includer. And the output once again looks the same. However, as we've learned, when we dig deeper into the translated JSP, we will see different outcomes. I'll leave this part for self-study again. that concludes this tutorial. I will see you in the next one.